Croeso, welcome back. It's me from Britain's Hidden History, and there's a bill going through the Welsh Senedd, the Welsh Parliament, which directly affects anyone involved or interested in historical monuments, protecting them, visiting them, metal detecting them, or if you have a listed building, maybe you want to do some work on it, you want to do it up, the frustrations and legislation about that, and the trouble you can get into. Please watch this. The penalties can be really severe, massive financial penalties, and up to 2 years imprisonment. Right, before I go any further, I am not a lawyer, okay? I'm not offering legal advice. Please be clear, quite the opposite. I'm hoping that people out there will read this document because it's huge and will pick out points of interest and let me know about them in the comments or send me an email, all right? So if we look at this here, there's a link in the description. It's called the Historic Environment Wales Bill. Right, about the bill. The bill includes provision, now this is the key here, to consolidate legislation. So this is welcome, what they're doing, okay? Because what's happening at the moment, you've got bits of law all over the place, and it's very difficult for the general public particularly to know what exactly they can do, or what they can do to appeal or protest if something is done to them, or if there's some works they want to stop, or something like that. So everything's being brought together. So it provides the protection of monuments, buildings and conservation areas by bringing together and restating already existing legislation, all right? There's not meant to be anything new in this. It's just bringing everything together into one place, for which I'm very grateful. I think it's a very welcome piece of legislation. There are a few things I'd like to see added in, I don't know if it's possible, but I really think it's our democratic obligation to scrutinise things like this and look to see, whoa, that's not consolidation, you added something in there, or this is an encroachment, or we're losing some rights, or, they might have missed something. Like I said, the person doing it, put it together, is Mick Ontonu, who I've met, local Labour Party group. He's great, nice bloke, very open. I'm sure he'd love to hear your observation, comments and questions. His email, unsurprisingly, is mick.antonu@senedd.wales. I say he is a lawyer, as far as I can remember. He used to be European Union member. He's been an AM, and I think they're now called MS, member of the Senedd. All right, so get in touch with Mick. Oh, let me know. Right, first we're going to find the bill. This took me a while. Someone had to point it out to me. So you go to this bill introduced bit. There's a scroll down. There's lots of explanations and all this kind of stuff, which I'm sure a lawyer somewhere, one of you could look at it. I'm really hoping people just read through as much as you can, or pick a chunk and post some comments about it. All right, so here it is, because it is massive. It's 200 pages. So each one of these points has got a whole bunch of paragraphs and stuff. Okay, so you get the basic arrangement, the definitions, key terms, all that kind of stuff. Works affecting scheduled monuments, which I'll come on to in a second. Partnership agreements, I don't really get involved in that. Enforcement of controls, this comes into it. And then this is one which I can't see anything in there, unless I've missed it. It talks about acquisition, guardianship and public access. That's all good, we'll talk about that. What I don't see anywhere is obligations to actually do things with something once it's been acquired. Public personal bugbear of mine is the Llewellyn stone, which is taken from a field in Brecon, a few shillings given to the farmer, and then it's taken away to British Museum, where it's displayed upside down facing a wall for a long time, and then as far as I can tell, the last at least 6-7 months, it's not on display at all. There should be an obligation if you are going to take objects away on a compulsory purchase basis as guardianship or protection. At the very, very least, there are loads and loads of pictures online that we can have a look at to see and do our research and try and interpret it and read it and that kind of thing. Because they're not owned by the government, they are owned by the people. These objects are generally hundreds or if not thousands of years old, and they're to be they're stewards, not owners. It's not like a copyright situation, okay? All right, so there's a whole section. Chapter 7 is general damage to monuments, and this is one that's going to affect you the most. There are like 58, 59 and 60 restrictions on use of metal detectors, right? So look out for that one. Scroll down to the next section then. Right, now we come on to listed buildings of special interest. You might actually have one of these. It's amazing how many buildings are listed. You might have an old farm building, even a shed or something, and you find it's listed. It can be really frustrating going through all the approvals, process and inspections, having to use authentic materials, all that. There is some possible relief here for you, but I'm not a lawyer. Please, I can't emphasize that enough, okay? So there's loads of stuff there. Control of works affecting listed buildings, when need authorization, what you can do, dealing with applications, and there's certain things you can and can't do, which might help you. I will come on to that in a second. Enforcement of controls related to listed buildings. It's a big, very comprehensive document. It's pretty good, actually. Find the bit you're looking for and how they work. And then you've got their powers to enter land during work, conservation areas, lots of stuff. All right, appeals and on and on and on it goes. I've just picked out a few parts of interest to look at now, okay? This is one I'm hoping, well, that's not the right word. It's refreshing, relieving to know that the Welsh ministers are the ones who can stop works. Because if remember, subscribe to this channel, because there's going to be more about this coming up. And also, we got some very disturbing examples where works have gone ahead by contractors, we're not talking private individuals, where they've literally driven through scheduled monuments, put access roads, things like that. It's appalling. I hope you've all read the Wales Vision 2040 document. Hope there'll be a link in there. I'm going to get to it. There's going to be 7,500 houses a year built in Wales, a lot of them on the hills. And you've got these wind farms going to be all over the place. And it's not just the turbines themselves, although they're pretty destructive and very terrible for nature. There's also the access roads that get carved through and the platforms, the cranes and all sorts. And they do not always observe the local historical points. So this is the kind of, we need to know the procedures, what to do when these things have been infringed. So stop notices, all that kind of thing there. All right, so there's ways of, we need to find our ministers the one to carry this out. All right, let's go. This is the one particular for Britain's Hidden History members and metal detectors and people like that. Offence of damaging certain monuments of special historic interest. Now this is one, just go back a little bit before it, because I'm going to tie two things together. A person who, without lawful excuse, destroys or damages, which can be very minor things, can be construed as damage for the purposes of this law, is guilty of an offence if the person knew or ought reasonably to have known that it was a protected monument. Right, ought reasonably to have known. Now this is the thing, right, because it also mentions in the previous obligations that they have to make these accessible. It's in this sort of area. You'll find that they're supposed to make access accessible, and they may provide information and facilities, all right? Well, I suggest they want to look at that, because if you want to be reasonable, the people know it's a monument, at least put a sign up or something. You might see my video a couple of weeks ago, say if it's stone, and large stone, one of Wales's most famous saints, probably the most famous after David, and yet you kind of find it 'cause it's overgrown. The people going there would have no idea of knowing that was an ancient monument. All right, unless you watch this channel, of course. So please, at least put a sign up. There is a little sign saying there's a gas pipe, but not the famous saint. Oh dear, what a mad world we live in, okay? Now this also extends then to metal detectors, okay? You've got to get consent. Now in this section, consent, all right? Consent doesn't mean the farmer said yes. Consent means the written consent of the Welsh ministers, okay? So you can try and get the dissent, all right? And what a metal detector is: any device designed or adapted for detecting or locating any metal or mineral in the ground. Yeah, all right, so it might not cover some other scanning processes. Anyway, so a person commits an offence if the person uses a metal detector in a protected place without consent. So if you haven't got consent, and that's the written consent we're referring to, I assume, because it's defined there for us, look. There, or you can fail to comply to any conditions. They might say, yes, you can go there, but no digging, or something like that, or yes, but you can't climb on the monument, or anything like that, okay? If you take anything away, don't even take a stone away, take nothing away, all right? And you can read that yourself there, it's point 60, because what you'll find is if you are guilty of conviction, here somewhere, the same thing again, you get a large fine and up to 2 years imprisonment, all right? So it is worth learning this if you want to do some metal detecting or visiting scheduled monuments. Right, last thing I want to cover is controls related to listed buildings, which you might have. It's like I say, it's amazing how many buildings are listed. if you carry out unauthorised works or breaching conditions of consent. So say, yeah, you can build a new wall, but you've got to use 400-year-old bricks, and you've got to use horsehair panelling, and you've got to use lath and plaster to finish it. That's the terms. Okay, I'm not a lawyer, right? That's how I would read it. So if you do this without all the correct bits of paper ticked and everything, then it's an offence. And again, now, you do have a possible defence, though. This is interesting, right? It is a defence. It is a defence for the person to prove that. So you'll prove it. Works were urgent, necessary interests of safety or health, or for the preservation of the building. So I'm surprised more people don't try and use this. Because I know people who've got buildings which are falling into the ground, and it's a nightmare trying to get all the original materials. And some of the provisions, even for an old shed or something, or farmhouse, you've got to hand work the timbers, and you've got to use genuine old lime materials for the walls and stuff. In the meantime, a lot of people are saying, I just can't be doing with it. I'll just let the building rot to nothing and then demolish it. It's tragic. So you can try this angle perhaps, okay? Or you can say it's not practical to secure health or safety or the preservation of the building, if they didn't do the works, basically. So this is your chance. But again, be very careful, because you can get a fine or imprisonment up to 2 years. Now, this is interesting, different to the other one. In determining the amount of any fine imposed on this section, the court must in particular must in particular have regard to any financial benefit which has accrued or appears likely to accrue in the person in consequence of the offence, which I would imagine is when you add value to the property. You buy an old shack for 500 quid, you make it into this beautiful country abode with all the mod cons. It's worth 250 grand, happy days. That 250 grand, I assume, would be taken into account when deciding the fine, maybe all of it. So it's not a case of actually a 200 quid fine, bugger it, I'll carry on, and then just pay the fine out of my profits. No. Okay, they've thought of that. And then intentional damaging and that, I'm sure people wouldn't want to do anyway. But again, it's a case of, do you know the building's listed? And intentional damaging, I would suggest something like you've got 2 rooms, you want to lock them into one to make a beautiful open plan house. So you knock the wall down and you find it was listed, that would be damage. So even doing that could, in theory, get you into big trouble. All right? So there's lots of things in here. I need your help. Please have a read. If you see anything of interest, in the comments, if you've got legal background, mention that as well, perhaps. Help me. I'm not able to read all of this, but I think it's important. We need to know. And as a democratic thing, we should give the feedback on what we think as it goes through. Until the next time, Heddiw.